When America was at war with itself and the EPA and the British couldn't find a way to make a fun and reliable car, there was only one country left that could fight their way onto the land of the free. Problem was, they didn't have the best reputation. War and all that, plus a bit of being a touch too cheap, meant that someone had to turn the perception of hundreds of millions of Americans, and that's exactly what this car did. I'm Alex Martini, and today we're talking about how to modify a Datsun 240 to 280Z.
But many of the features that make this car a champion on the racetracks also make it an excellent performer in the street.
Welcome to MartiniWorks. We help you build cars like Datsuns, Nissans, and other cars that we spend way too much money on. If you're looking for wheel and tire packages, get it from the folks who give a crap, because in the sea of corporate conglomerates, we're just a few car folks who love helping other people out. The Datsun 240Z has a unique history that's worth noting. The story goes something a little bit like this. Yutaka Katayama was a boisterous man in the company of Nissan. Argumentative, challenging. Some Japanese executives would deem him borderline barbaric in the way that he pushed for Nissan to stay true to its racing roots. Something Katayama believed was even more important that when Nissan purchased Prince in the mid-1960s. But there was a problem. Nissan executives weren't a huge fan of his tactics, and corporate actually extradited him to America to just go do something over there. The US at that time was a war-torn country when looked at from the perspective of an automotive company. Too early for the weed to help calm people down, most consumers found Japanese cars too small, too underpowered, and too unreliable. The British tried to make things fun, but without the reliability, Americans weren't willing to take the risk to buy their second MG after the first one left them stranded on 41. And if you looked over to Europe, well, BMW had barely survived, and Mercedes were rarer than Ferraris. Things just weren't looking good. So Yutaka made a plan. He took the minuscule marketing budget provided by corporate and began making headway in the development of the Datsun name, learning, polling, and driving the cars as much as he could himself to build not just a Datsun, but a Datsun that could handle America. America is huge, and 50 years ago, companies couldn't quite understand how a country could have the elevation changes as drastic as California and still handle 110-degree weather, salt and heat, snow, but air conditioning. All of it was new and something only the big three knew how to deal with. But the Datsun 240Z changed that, with Mr. Matsuyo at the helm designing a car that earned its rightful place as an iconic design, and Mr. K sporting 2 test mules in the country to provide real-time feedback on issues the car had. The Datsun had the best chance it ever did at making a splash. And the goal was to sell a Z to any college graduate that could have only one car, make it affordable enough that anyone could jump into and use as a single car, and the Z, it did that. It did it super well. The inline 4 was smooth, the brakes were a bit wobbly but firm when needed. The suspension was something only seen in expensive European cars at the time, and the reliability was almost perfect. Sure, it was a bit loud on road noise, and sure, it naturally veered to the left, but in the grand scheme of affordable sports cars, it was like, well, bringing a knife to a rocket launcher fight.
Patrick, that's a rocket launcher?
Yes.
But how do you take a car that was over a half a century of rust and owners and electrical fires and all that mess and turn it into something that was just as capable 50 years ago for today? Well, that's a good question. When I owned my first Z, it was a Datsun 280Z, and I had it for about 5 or 6 years. It was broken more than running, and let me tell you, I made all the mistakes you could with this car. The number one place to start is understanding where the rust is, because it will have it somewhere. It's hiding in the quarter panels, the firewall, the strut towers, even the floor sometimes, and you're gonna wanna get that fixed. Building a Datsun means you're going to learn how to glue metal, because not even Datsun thought these cars would be alive after 50 years. So focus on getting the car's floor pans, fenders, rails, and all that good stuff cleaned up, welded, and then treated. When I was on a budget, I actually just took a paintbrush and POR 15 the whole inside and underside of my car with like $50. Just do whatever you need to do to protect it. And while you're under there, now's a good time to check your differential. The 240Z came with an open diff called the R180. Newer ones like the 280Z came with R200s. The number just refers to the ring gear size. Now the R180 is alright, but if you plan to put power into the car, you'll want to get an R200 and then swap out your CV joints from a 300ZX Turbo. Otherwise, your stock CJ joints are going to sit low and you don't have a balanced handling under load. A lot of times you can swap out a bunch of Nissan bits to make the whole thing work. Now, they also have a terrible bracket system for their differential, so get an aftermarket one from Technoid Versions. Now the Z, they just use like a belt, and because it's mounted from the bottom, the rubber pulls versus compresses, and the noise you'll hear in that movement just kind of sucks. The differential is kind of a squeaky bitch on these cars. Now, you'll want to get new bushings, CV joints, and probably the bolts in there are just gone or completely rusted to oblivion. So they are old. Zs have a tendency to back out a lot of their hardware over years as well, because it was a very vibrating car. So spend some time just going through all the bits and places to make sure that you have all 4 bolts on your drive shaft. Coilovers are next, and the best thing about it, because the Z was so far ahead of time, that actually just a simple swap of coilovers in a 70s car is pretty rare. I previously had Apex engineered coilovers and loved them, and we don't even sell those bad boys. You can get BC Racing as well because they have fitments for it, but we just want to be honest. With wheels and tires, if you plan to stay 4-lug, you're stuck with either shoddy reps or expensive Japanese wheels. I had Rota Shakatins on my car a decade ago, and I probably wouldn't do it again. I'd go with the Equip 40s or the Equip 01s. And if you're willing to wait, we are a dealer for Watanabe, and to me, that's the proper wheel choice for Zs. Now, wheel sizes are wild on this car. You can't tell me that a stock body or a wide body look better. I think they both look incredible in their own right. But if you're going with stock fitment 16x8 plus 0, 16x7 plus 4 with overs, most folks will run a 15x9 negative 13 and a 15x10 negative 25. I'm 50-50 on fenders for these cars, but a nice duckbill with fender mirrors and an aftermarket exhaust, and you'll be pretty much set. The 2.4 to 2.8 liter are perfectly fine motors, but you're going to find more fun in opening up the intakes than anything else. Now, L6 ITBs are absolutely wicked, and you're gonna get into some wild work there, but you don't need to. The engine as is can give you a ton of fun on the road and still put a smile on your face. I'm gonna be honest with you. Is it the best motor? No. Is it an iconic motor? Yeah, it's f***ing sick, but the specialty of the Datsun is the driving experience. There's nothing quite like driving a Series 1Z. It's got trunk vents that let in the gas fumes, the sound of the inline 4 screaming through the revs, and the tightened up suspension giving you a feeling that you could drive this car at 100% if you really wanted to. It is a more analog Miata. We would recommend picking up some better brake pads from EBC or even swapping to something from Technotoy Tuning if you plan on putting any power into this car. So how do you modify a Datsun 240Z? Easy, baby. You grab $15,000 and you find a Datsun without the X at the end so you can keep the sleek look, and you'll learn just why Porsche owners traded in their car to get one of these. You'll notice the engine leaks, the car sways, there's a constant and faint smell of oil and gas at the same time. But that's what makes it a Datsun. From there, you want to go with coilovers from BC Racing, tires from Toyo or Continental, wheels from Work or Watanabe, and a Nardi steering wheel to put it all together for right around $5,000 or so. And after finding a shop that'll work on your exhaust, you'll start to learn that Zs were never meant to be alive for 50 years because half your diff bolts will be gone and your rear wheels won't sit center in the wheel arches. All normal Z stuff. Congratulations, you're part of a cult. Find weekends to put around working on this car and fall in love with what might be the original reason to the United States having an infatuation with tuner import cars. It started with a Z and it'll probably end with a Z. But most importantly, when you go to buy one, build one, or modify one, you do it with the folks that give a hoot right here at MartiniWorks. I'm Alex Martini. We hope you enjoyed this. We're here to be your wheel and fitment tire expert people. For Christ's sake, just mod your car with us so we can keep making cool videos like this. Super appreciate this one. Love the Datsun 240Z. You guys will have to let me know if you own one, and if you do, add it to our build threads over at MartiniWorks.com. And if you want to hear more stories about Zs or cars like it, give us some advice, give us some cars to talk about below as well. We'll see you on the next one. Adios.